I'm not ashamed.
What was the third plague that God inflicted upon Egypt? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Exodus chapter 8. We're going to be reading from verses 16 to 19. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus chapter 8, beginning at verse 16. So the Lord said to Moses, "Say to Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land so that it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt." And they did so. For Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and struck the dust of the earth, and it became lice on man and beast. All the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. Now the magicians so worked with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice on man and beast. Then the magicians said to Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." But Pharaoh's heart grew hard, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had said. In the last few episodes, we've been looking at the plagues that had been inflicted upon Egypt because of Pharaoh's rebellion against God in refusing to let the children of Israel go. In the first plague, God, through Moses, turned the Nile River into blood, killing the fish in the river as well. Pharaoh called his magicians, and they produced the same wonder, either through trickery or the power of God. Pharaoh hardened his heart and wouldn't heed the words of the Lord. The second plague was a plague of frogs. This plague caused an inordinate amount of frogs to come forth out of the Nile and occupy the land. Again, Pharaoh called his magicians, and again they copied the sign that Moses and Aaron produced. However, they couldn't remove the frogs from the land, showing us that they did not have the power to do so of themselves. If they produced any frogs at all, it was by the power of God. Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and asked them to call upon Jehovah to remove the frogs. When asked when he would like them removed, Pharaoh's response was, "Tomorrow." Again, this showed Pharaoh's lack of faith, for why wouldn't he want immediate relief? When the frogs were gone, Pharaoh again hardened his heart and refused to let Israel go. Which brings us to the third plague that we read of today. Unlike the first two plagues, this plague came without warning. In fact, we're going to find this pattern when it comes to the first 9 plagues. The plagues can be thus divided into sets of 3, with the first 2 coming with warnings, while the third one coming without warning. God instructed Moses and Aaron to stretch out their rod and strike the dust of the land, that it may become lice. The first 2 plagues were produced from the Nile, while this one is produced from the earth, which was worshipped in Egypt as the father of the gods. Now when you think of lice, you think of a small wingless insect that is parasitic when found on humans. What is being described here is more akin to a tick. Ticks like this proceed from eggs laid in the dust of the earth, which is why God had Moses strike the earth, similar to the miracle of the frogs where Moses was told to strike the Nile, the habitat of the frogs. The passage said that the dust of the earth became lice or ticks and resided on both man and beast. Some conclude that God did not spontaneously turn the dust into lice. Rather, he multiplied the lice already in the ground and brought them forth, similar to how he brought forth the frogs from the Nile. But if you look at the language of the 2 plagues, God didn't turn the Nile water into frogs. He brought forth the frogs from the Nile, miraculously multiplying how many were there. Here, however, with the third plague, the passage said that the dust became lice. It does not say that from the dust came forth lice. Therefore, we must conclude that the way these lice were produced is that God created these lice from the dust in such quantities that they were found on both man and beast. This lice, or tick, would be very harmful to the animals that they were on, for not only would they suck their blood, but they would also leave disease behind, causing even more damage. Like with the first 2 plagues, Pharaoh called his magicians to see if they could duplicate the miracle. This time, though, they could not. If they had been working by sleight of hand, turning the dust into lice would be impossible, for the lice did not come forth out of the dust became lice. If, however, they were performing these signs unwittingly by the power of God, God did not allow them to perform this miracle, so as to show Pharaoh that these men were frauds. If the latter is the case, it shows us that God controls all things, and if he doesn't want a miracle to be performed, then it won't be performed. When the magicians failed, they came to Pharaoh and admitted that what was done by the finger of God. The word for God that the magicians used here was Elohim, not Jehovah. So the magicians were not admitting to Pharaoh that the God of Moses the eternal, unchanging God of this universe had done this miracle, merely that a God more powerful than themselves, possibly one that was hostile to them, performed this miracle, which is why they couldn't replicate it. Pharaoh should have seen these magicians for what they were, fakes. But he didn't. Instead, he hardened his heart again and would not let the children of Israel go. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus chapter 8, verses 20 to 24, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not a
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
of his cross.